AJ here with ProLine. Today, I want to answer a question that we get fairly often, which is I have a quoting tool that I love to use that is, outside my CRM, and I want to keep using that tool with ProLine. How is that going to work? And can I continue to use ProLine's other features such as orders and invoicing, even if I'm not quoting through ProLine itself? And the short answer to that is absolutely. We want to support you as much as possible with using that outside tool that you love. A lot of times there's some tools out there that have some additional functionality beyond what ProLine's quoting tools have. And so, if you want to stick with that, you're absolutely welcome to do so. We have a direct integration with some, and then also you can integrate others through Zapier. If that's the route you want to take, you definitely can do that with ProLine, and you're still going to be able to use ProLine's other features like ordering and invoicing. But and here's the caveat to that. We didn't build the quoting tool inside of ProLine just for fun. It was a lot of work, and we only did it because there's some really substantial advantages to having your quoting inside the CRM in the same system as the ordering and the invoicing. And there's no way around it. When you have different softwares, you can have them talk to each other, but there's some real limitations on how much data can be sent, how often that data can be sent. And especially when you're talking about trying to convert order or quotes into orders where you need all those line items to carry over, and you have to have that, a link back to a price list and all of that. That is just way too much to send over any kind of connection. And so because of that, there's definitely some limitations. But what I want to do first is let's look at how ProLine's quotes, orders, and invoicing works if you're using ProLine quotes. So let's start there. Then I'm going to contrast that with if you're using an outside quoting tool, what does that look like instead? What's the kind of the drawbacks there? And then, what are potential workarounds to get that process to work for you still? All right, so let's start. If you are using ProLine's quotes, then the first step you're going to do is just make sure to fill out all of your measurement values. So you can use any measurement tool that you want. We are working on some direct integrations with a few different measurement solutions, including EagleView. But at the moment, you would just fill out this data manually from whatever source you're pulling it from. Then when you go to create a quote, it's just a couple clicks here. You select the template that you want to create that you've already customized inside of ProLine. And ProLine is going to automatically quote the job for you. It's going to automatically assign quantities to all these line items, and then also pull the pricing from your price list and automatically price the job. And so that happens all automatically, super fast and easy. And then you can, customize some additional stuff down here if you need to for the quote settings. And then you go and you send this, and this is going to take a moment and generate the quote here for us to view, and then we can sign it. And then once it's signed, I'll show you how it interacts with ProLine's orders and invoicing. So we'll just give this a few moments to finish up on creating the PDF for this quote. And here we go. So we have the PDF now ready to go. We have our different options here, and then we have our signing page here. And we're going to go ahead and sign this. We'll select an option, select any upgrades that we want, and then we can choose our method here for signing. Sign and accept. And then it's going to regenerate that PDF again with the signature to complete it. So now we have this signed quote here. So if we look down here, we have our nice little signature, and these have been selected. The deposit and balance have been filled in. And so all good to go. We even have that initial here. All right, so we have our signed quote. Now we jump over to orders. We get a new order. We're going to select that signed quote that we want to create an order for. And then we can use one of our templates. We have a material order and a work order in here by default. So I can create a material order. And this is the sort of the magic if you're doing your quoting through ProLine, is ProLine's going to automatically pull in all of your materials, not your labor, but your materials, or your labor if this was a work order. and is going to pull all these line items in with their quantities. And then that way, when you're sending this order off to your supplier, your rep with your supplier, it's going to automatically have all of those line items here ready to go that you want. And we can look at it in email form here. So this is going to shoot off to your supplier's rep. But that all happens automatically. And that's very important to note. It's literally a click to generate this material order. That is a little bit different if you're not quoting in ProLine. So just put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it. But when you're quoting through ProLine, creating the material orders and labor orders is super quick. Then when we go to invoice the job, if you are charging deposits, you can create a deposit invoice first, but you can also just create something for the balance as well. So if we want to just charge for the whole job here, we can create the balance invoice, and there we go. So it has the total here. Yeah, so this is all ready to go. So and ProLine has automatically pulled in the total amounts. We have this little check because it is in sync with what the signed quote says, and because it's in sync, it has this little check mark. If we do change it, which is not super recommended, it's going to let us know this is no longer in sync with the signed quote. So that really avoids errors on the invoice side. And then, what's more recommended is keep those in sync. Then you can add additional lines. If you need to make adjustments, you can say broken flower pot, -100. Boom. Now you leave these in sync, but you have added this extra line item that's adding a discount on this invoice. So that's the if you need to make adjustments, that's the preferred way to do it. But the thing to remember here is this happens automatically, and it's automatically syncs up to avoid any errors on invoicing. So this is how the invoicing and then we can send this off and get this invoice completed. So this is the flow that we've designed inside of ProLine, from quote to order to invoice, and it takes seconds. Of course, you're going to want to train your reps or whoever's doing your quoting and orders and invoicing to go back and review things and make sure they're correct. But most of this happens automatically, and at least even if you didn't have someone double check it, it's going to be right more often than not, and this is going to save a ton of time. So let's contrast this with not having this quote inside of, we're just going to clear this out. So we'll kind of start from the beginning here, and we'll delete this quote. So let's say you don't have that quote inside of ProLine. So you're doing it through some other system, and you want to still send orders and invoices from ProLine. You can absolutely still do this, but it's going to take some manual work. So the way this works is now we have no signed quote to grab. You might say, oh, well, why don't you just pull that over from the other system? The problem is all the data on line items, your price list, everything is in that system. And we're just not able to pull that over into ProLine without completely recreating what they have on their side, and which we basically have the capability to do, which I'll kind of come back to. There's sort of a workaround here. So we'll get back to that. But we're not able to just magically pull that over because it's so much data there. But if I don't have a quote to choose from here, I can still just create a material order. So I'll create this material order. It just doesn't have anything here. And so what I'm going to have to do is put in whatever I want to send through this order. And because ProLine is just sending orders, we don't generate PDFs, at least not at this time. We haven't seen a good reason why you would need a PDF for a work order or material order. We might add that later down the line, but from what we've seen, most reps and most sub crews, they just want an email and text with all the information. They don't want to have to open a dashboard up or a PDF up. So because that's how ProLine works, it just is going to be a lot of time if you're going to want to build all this out. So you can, if you want, you can build out your work order, your material order here, and then you can send it through ProLine. It's just probably not faster than just shooting off a text and an email, essentially doing it manually. It's not really saving you that much time. You can certainly do it if you want it to all like have a record of it in ProLine. But I mean, you're literally going to have to do all of this manually. So you got to add every single line item that you need in this order, put in the quantities based on what it needs to be for this job, and then you can send it. So you can definitely do it. You can use this feature, but because your quotes are not inside of ProLine, there's no way for ProLine to build this out for you automatically. So we have that, and then it's similar with invoices, but not as intense. Invoices are a lot easier, so we can just create an invoice here. We don't have any signed quotes, so there's no lines here. So I can go in here and I can add a line. And then in most cases, you can split it up, but in most cases, I'm just going to add whatever the total was for that roof. You can see here, there's nothing to sync with because there's no quote in ProLine. And just build this out, roof replacement. I can add a description here. This is for your new roof. Make that description as long as you need it to be. And yeah, so I have an invoice for $23K now. So that is a lot easier. You can definitely still use the invoicing feature without having to do a lot of extra work. The main drawback is you're going to need to double check this number and make sure you're setting the right number and that it's correct based on what was signed in the quote. So that is how that works. So let's talk about a workaround here. So like I was saying, I mean, maybe you do want to just manually build out these material orders and labor orders inside of ProLine and send them through ProLine just so you have a record. You can definitely do that. However, if you want to avoid doing that, but still not have your quotes in ProLine, what you could do is you could create sort of a copy of your quotes on that other platform or your layouts or templates or whatever they're called over there, and then create a matching template inside of ProLine that breaks down to essentially the same price with all the same items. And you'd have to make your price list match in ProLine as well. So you'd have to make sure all your price lists in your settings here. So if we go to settings, quotes, your price list down here is going to have to all be the same as in the other platform. And then you could create a matching quote template. And it doesn't have to look fancy. It just needs to have the same matching options and matching upgrades that work out to the same price. And then what you could do is you could add that as a quote. So once it gets signed in the other platform, you're getting ready to do an order on our side, you would create that quote from the matching template. You can make it by default in the template not have a signature page. So no signature page because you're not going to collect the signature through ProLine. And then you generate it. But now, because there's no signature page, you're not going to actually send it to the customer. What you're going to do, and we'll show you this here in a second, is you're just going to manually approve it. So if there's no signature page, you have the ability to approve internally. And there's nowhere to sign because there's no signature page. You can just approve this manually. So this is now approved, which is essentially the same as it being signed. And so then now it's going to say approved. And now this can be used in your orders just to save on that time. Now, the thing about doing this will make it so you don't have to build these out from scratch. You're going to have to go in and tweak this to make sure it perfectly matches up with what's in the other platform. So that's a little extra work, but it's not as bad as having to manually build out your orders. But the irony here is that if you're going to go through all that work to create a matching template on the ProLine side, unless there are features that you really are tied to on that other platform, you've basically completely migrated to ProLine quoting. So you might as well just use our quoting. Unless there's a feature, because I understand some of these other platforms have bells and whistles that we don't have and may never have. So unless there's something that you're really tied to feature-wise, if you're like you said, if you're going to spend all that time to match your price list, match the templates, so that you can use them for orders. You basically have already done all the work to migrate. You're just quoting in general. So you might as well just do it through ProLine. So hopefully that helps. I mean, to sum all this up, we understand that, some people have a workflow with another platform. They want to keep that. And there's some great quoting tools out there that have that additional functionality or bells and whistles that we might not have. And that's totally understand that. So we want to support you as much as possible. There's just some real limitations with having the quoting outside of your CRM. And we've solved those limitations by having the internal quoting tool. But if you don't want to take advantage of that, there's just some drawbacks. There's some manual data entry that still has to happen, and it's just going to be a little bit of extra work. One last note before we kind of wrap up here. Some of these other quoting tools have order functionality built into them. And so my best recommendation is, if you're really want to stick with another quoting tool, try to use their quoting and their orders. Just use the whole gamut, because as you're seeing here, it's just a good amount of manual entry to use ours if you're using some other quoting tool. So, pay them extra if you need to. I would highly recommend using their orders functionality, just because quotes and orders are so intertwined. They use that. They're going to utilize that same price list and product list between them. And so it's just really, really hard to have them on different platforms and have it work smoothly. So in that case, if you could use the orders on that other quoting tool, that's what I'd recommend. That way you just don't use any of ProLine's quotes or orders. And then with the invoicing, you would just generate an invoice and type in that amount, which as I showed is really not that hard. So this is not a big deal to do this part manually. You're really going to have to double check it manually anyway, since invoicing is such an important piece. So that's not a big deal. You can still use our invoicing, but you would just completely not use our measure, quote, or order tab, and just completely do that on the other platform. So hopefully that helps. I know there's kind of a lot going on there, but we are here to help. Don't hesitate to reach out to our support with your unique setup, and we'll give you a rundown on what our recommendations are.